it might be worth thinking about why you even like working there other than the actual job at hand. And if that job at hand is in question because you feel burnt out or you don't feel heard or supported, then if that conversation doesn't feel like something you can have, then it might be really worth looking to go somewhere else, because we operate in this fear mongering cycle where I'm not going to be able to find something else, or I don't have time to look for a new job. But I really do think that if you can't feel supported, there's something else out there. There's new companies being made faster than we can even, look them up these days. So that's something that I've had to talk to people about that are hard conversations, because sometimes you don't want to realize that the only kind of way out is leaving. You want to think that the company that you've maybe been with for years is going to support you and advocate for you. But unfortunately, and even from personal experience, that's just not the case sometimes.
Welcome to Limitless, the podcast for cycle breakers, change makers, and conscious leaders who are done performing, proving, and pleasing, and are ready to live, lead, and create from deep alignment. I'm your host, Fiona Walsh. Every 2 weeks, I hold space for real soul-expanding conversations with guests who are still in it. They're navigating their biggest fears, shedding old identities, letting go of patterns that no longer serve them, and rising into their limitless potential. Together, we share what it's really like to be human, messy, raw, imperfect, and learning to own every part of ourselves, even the ones we've tried to keep neatly tucked away. We go deep into the work of coming home to yourself, getting out of your head, feeling safe in your body, letting go of old stories, and creating a life that's true to who you really are. Subscribing to Limitless is the best way to make sure you never miss an episode. So hit pause and tap follow or subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Because this isn't about doing more. It's actually about remembering who you are. And that's what makes you limitless. Welcome to Limitless. Today, I'm joined by Morgan Wilson. She's the founder of the Wilson Co. She's a career strategist who spent a decade inside legal recruiting before getting laid off and spending 6 months figuring out who she was without the title. This conversation today is for anyone who's ever had the Sunday scaries, anyone who's climbed or climbing the corporate ladder and quietly wondering, am I even on the right ladder? Anyone who has stayed somewhere too long, maybe it was for the people, the stability, the identity, and felt that slow, draining, exhausting feeling that comes with that. In my coaching work, I spend a lot of time with people who are finding themselves in this place. They're high performers who are succeeding on paper, but really feeling misaligned and not connected to themselves on the inside. Morgan knows this world from every angle, the person going through it and also being the coach on the other side. She's built her entire practice around what comes after, and this conversation is a really honest version of that story. Morgan, welcome to Limitless. I'm so excited you're here today.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Amazing. Well, can you take us back to that turning point, pivot point moment in your life where everything had to change?
Yes, I can. So we're going back not too long ago, I guess 2024 in August. So a couple years ago, I got let go from my job, and I had been in that career for 10 years, nearly a decade, nearly 10 years, and really saw myself doing what I've been doing for the rest of my career. I was in legal recruiting and had started doing that right after I graduated college, and moved around to a few different firms. But I had internally gotten to a point where I was pretty burnt out. I was really focused on everything just work related in my life. And I really felt like this was a turning point of me being able to, internally reflect on what I wanted to do next, even though it was not something that I chose for myself.
Okay, cool. And what did burnout look and feel like for you?
So I don't know if you're familiar, if anyone listening is familiar with the cycle of legal recruiting, but you kind of go the cycle of what a school year is. And so, beginning in the fall, you're going on campus to meet new students and you start recruiting them really the second month that they start school. And so it's a very competitive process and it doesn't stop. And then you get to the summer when they're off break and they're with you as interns. And so they would leave at the end of July and I would have a couple weeks off and we would pick back up. And I just felt like I never really got a break.
Mm.
I was probably working 70 to 80-hour weeks. I would get breaks on the weekend, but I was in the time of my life where I was kind of burning the candle at both ends and saying yes to everything socially to make up for how busy I was during the week. And I just got to a breaking point where it just wasn't sustainable. It wasn't healthy. And I didn't really know how to break the cycle without it kind of being broken for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And given that this was 2 years ago, what have you unpacked or learned about yourself in the last 2 years about overfunctioning and working that got you to that point?
Yeah, it's a great question. After that happened, I really took 6 months off to just kind of recalibrate. I had never fully had a break since starting work right after college. And I felt like this was the only time that I could really sit with what happened and figure out what's next for me and what did I want this next chapter of my life. And coincidentally, I just turned 32. So it felt like, okay, this is a whole new, a chapter of my life. And I need to kind of steer the boat where I want to go and figure out what that looks like.
Yeah.
And so I think it was really important for me to take a break, to journal a lot, internalize what I'd been through, and what I wanted to do next. And also work closely with, I worked with a career coach myself, that really helped me identify what I loved about my job, the things that I did not want to keep doing, and how I could kind of pivot into something new. And I feel like it led me into a really great place of realizing that success isn't just about how many hours you work or what your job title might be. And I needed to identify what success meant to me in my own life.
And because this podcast really focuses on the inner work, like what does success mean to you now? If it's not an external definition, what does it mean to Morgan now?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And I think it's something that is not stagnant. It is always changing. In different stages of your life, I think success can look like something different. And I do look back and I'm not, I think in my 20s, what I found was success was continuing to get that promotion and the recognition, and challenging myself with, maybe it was a new firm or a growth opportunity. But as I kind of came out from that situation, I realized what success looks like as in a career is not separate from what I wanted my life to look like and what I felt like was kind of success in my own life. And for me, that was really identifying, what is it I want to do? What's the impact I want to make? And that's kind of what led me to start my own business, because I felt like being able to have the impact on others, whether it's to figure out what their passion is or with companies, trying to find the right people or, grow internally. I wanted to feel like I could help them find what that means like for them. At the same time, I had never really chosen myself and being like, where I lived, my relationships. And so for me in this chapter, success to me is a bit of a balance. And not every day is perfect. Some days are those really long 15-hour work days and it's less about social. But I feel like I'm really chasing a dream that I can say is something I did for myself. And I'm not doing it for someone else.
Yeah, that makes sense. And because I know when you're in an organization where the culture is very fast paced and there's like everyone around you is working long hours, it's very easy to get swept up in that. I was in business development and the client side of a big commercial global law firm in Australia for 10 years. So I know the environment that you are a part of. And one of the things that I found hard because I had people pleasing tendencies was a lack of boundaries, because I was supporting at one stage a disputes area, and they quite often worked through the night if they were on a big case. And it was actually hard to sometimes leave at like 8 o'clock at night, which was late anyway, because the whole floor was still buzzing as if it was midday. How did you find yourself? Because you were also in a similar environment, I'm guessing, like the law firms in the US, no different to Australia or the UK, where everyone's listening from. How did you navigate that? Because you were a support function, you weren't a Fiona when people were like, go around the clock. How did you like establish your own boundaries?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm really glad that we're kind of able to resonate on that, because sometimes you feel like you're in the trenches alone. And, even when you're in a support role, you're still around all these, like you said, high achieving people that do have deadlines that, and also they're getting paid more to do that job. I never really saw like my position as less than, because I still felt like I needed to deliver that white glove service. And I looked at it as my clients were the partners I worked with. And I wanted to make it look like it was easy, even if I was up until, 1 or 2 in the morning, a few nights a week getting things done, so that they didn't feel like they were asking for anything. I was always going above and beyond, because they were doing that for their clients. So I still respect, the experience. I understand that it's just the industry standard. And while I don't think it's the most healthy, it is something that I know a lot of people you kind of have to deal with. And for me, I think getting out of it was really necessary and not something I kind of, at this point in my life, am able to recognize when I start to act that way, or when I start to kind of add that additional stress onto my own plate, because I do have competitive and people pleasing tendencies. And I have to recognize that I have to kind of choose me first. I felt like every single week I was dealing with this impending just anxiety with what the next week would look like. And so when I was able to take a long period of time and get out of it, I just knew that I had to recognize that my own, I guess, tendencies to react that way, and then protect my own time, and come up with ways and measures to make sure, daily when I'm setting my own schedule, what does that look like, so that I'm not going to bed that night super anxious for the next day. And it's not to say that, I'm not perfect. It still happens. But I do think that with the right support systems in place and recognizing yourself a little bit more, I was able to kind of self-regulate, I guess you could say. And I think part of that just is due to the fact that I decided that environment is not something I want to be in anymore. I had opportunities to stay in the legal field. And I think it would have been easy for me to jump right back in and do exactly what I knew and what was comfortable. But I just felt like it truly was such a pivotal moment in my life that it happened for a reason. And the reason was not just to jump back into it. It was to get out and start something of my own.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, having worked in the legal industry and being a part of the system for like a decade, and now I coach some partners and some business service people as well. It's definitely a partnership. Environments have definitely got their own culture, and there's things that are tolerated there, which means it's part of the culture, which would be like completely laughed at or put down in lots of other different industries. So it's quite, I mean, I'm very grateful for the time I had there. I had incredible opportunities and I loved working in a really high performance environment. But I'm also really honest with the people I coach that this doesn't exist in there are organizations out there where this stuff wouldn't be tolerated. So like, if you've had enough, there are options to move on and go and explore, different industries or environments, or like, as you and I have both done, go and start working for yourself, and then you get to design your whole life and your whole work day, which is probably the best way to do it. For someone who is listening who has Sunday scaries, because this is like a really common, it's no longer a phenomenon. And I feel like so many people have it. What are some like tips that you would coach people through, or things that worked on you that when they hit, like, how did you like work through them?
Yeah, I think, it's like what you said, something we say, oh, I have the Sunday scaries, but it really does get real. And one way I talk to my own clients, but also for myself, is I have a routine on Sunday to get myself organized for the week. So anything I can do to make sure when I wake up on Monday morning, I'm feeling like I have clarity for the day and the week ahead.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something I know, we talk about, where everyone is talking about how AI is impacting everything. There are positives and negatives, I do believe. But one thing that's been really helpful to me is to have AI kind of go through um, my email inbox and my calendar and kind of give me a to do. So when I open up my laptop on Monday morning, it's like I had someone working for me overnight that is looking at, okay, here's what you have for the week. Here are your highest priority to dos. Here are the emails you need to respond to. And it's helped me feel like I don't wake up with just this hit in my stomach of like, I have a lot to do. Where do I even begin?
Mm-hmm.
And it's helped me really organize my week as well. Really see, especially when you work for yourself, you could work all day. Some days are lighter than others, but if you don't kind of keep yourself accountable and organized, it will just feel like you're running around with your head chopped off. So a big thing I've really leaned into is using AI to my advantage and helping me stay organized. Time blocking my calendar is super important, even putting in times when I need to go run errands, or I'm going to Pilates class, or I'm walking my dog.
Yeah.
Because then I feel like I have a moment to myself that is actually designated for me, instead of just, oh, I'll find 15 minutes here and there. You can look down at 7 p.m. and you didn't even eat for the day. So,
Yeah. And like I'm a parent, and a lot of people listening are parents as well. Like, it's even more complex when you add children into the mix, because they bookend the start and end of the day where you may have like gone to the gym or taken time for yourself as well. So I'm 100% I'm with you. You have to schedule in your exercise, and my partner and I also schedule in fun time where we have an hour we literally can go and do like just something fun together. Might be a walk or whatever, or go play tennis or something, but like something, says otherwise it's just too easy to be in it and productive all the time, but not actually have your foot off the gas. Um, what have you learned about your identity? Because you were talking about you identified with like the status and the role and probably the organizations and like all those things that come with the big legal sort of environment. What have you learned about, or what's changed in your identity since you've transitioned and built your own business?
yeah, I think that's something that was really hard for me for a while. So I'm really thankful that I was able and that I did take a long break to work on myself
Mhm.
after kind of what I went through a couple years ago, because I think the 26-year-old me would not have had the financial stability, or almost the self I self worth or recognition of self, I guess, that I did at 30, to realize that I needed to take some time and realize that my identity should not be held in my job, and my job title. And that even, getting let go, getting fired, whatever you want to coin it, that's also not my identity. I think what I struggled with right out of the gate after that was that everything I've been doing for 10 years, and I was very good at my job. It really did not have anything to do with my actual job and performance. So I felt like all of that would just be kind of taken away from me so quickly. And like the rug was just pulled out from under me. And so what I did, just a lot of internal work. I'm a big believer in therapy and journaling. And it's a lot easier said than done. I think once I started putting pen to paper and realizing, what it was what's the real reason that is making this so difficult for me, and why did I put so much of my identity and my performance at work, and the status of the company I worked for. And when you take that away and when you start something of your own, your reputation is all you. When your brand is who you are, you need to think about who do you want that brand to be, because it's you, and it's you showing up every day for yourself and for others. And I realized I had to really map out, like, in 30 years from now, what do I want people to recognize me for? Is it my job, or is it my relationships, my impact on my community, how I can help others, and how I show up for myself and others? And I think that really shaped what I wanted to do going forward, was not chasing the next big title and the next company, because I don't think that those things are what I want to align with. I wanted to align myself with really the impact I can make on other people. And that was kind of a big shift for me, was realizing I have to get out of my own way, and it doesn't matter. It's not the big name. It's really, the people and the impact I can make in my relationships versus the title and the prestige.
Yeah. Yeah. You went through a big shift of like valuing things that were somewhat external to you to like internally, like when I show up as my best self, this is what people get. And this is the impact I have is from that, which is really beautiful.
Yeah. And I'll say, I don't want to discredit climbing a ladder. I don't think there's necessarily something wrong with it at all. I think had I not been a part of that system, then I wouldn't even understand what hard work really means, and the importance of team, and just the whole structure of it all. I do really value. But I do think that it just came a time for me that I need to recognize why I place so much value in that. And that while it was a stepping stone, it's almost like, okay, now this is a leap to something new. And so I want to make sure, there's a time and a place for all different paths, I think, when it comes to your career. So
Yeah, I agree. I also think though that if people are 100% focused on climbing the ladder, it's good to pause every once in a while and be like, am I enjoying this? Is this what I wanted? Am I feeling fulfilled? Because it might be that the rung you're on is like the right level of status, but you might need to move to a different ladder over here or something like that. But I think if you're unconsciously climbing the ladder because that's all you thought you needed to do to be successful. I coach a lot of people in midlife who are like miserable because they hit like 50 and they're like, I thought it was all about climbing the ladder and now here I am and I've got like a lot of material things to show for it, but I don't know who I am and I'm not happy and I'm burnt out and I'm lost and stuff like that. So I just think like having some presence along the way can be really, really helpful for anchoring into like, am I in line with what I want as much as I've got this external success? Does it feel as good on the inside as it does on the outside?
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I agree completely. Especially inside those systems, there's so much emphasis placed on the next promotion, your review, reflecting on it, hitting certain benchmarks and things like that, that sometimes it's really hard to remember to take time for yourself to really think about, let's take inventory of your life. Is this what you want? Before you do feel like you have to look back and really regret, a 25-year career, or you want to do a big pivot and it almost feels like it's too late.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one thing is it is never too late. Yeah. I went to an event a few months ago where they had people, presenters who were in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. And like the 70s and 80s were the most inspiring stories. And like one of the ladies she retired at like 68 and then she's written 4 books in 4 years. So it's like there is, how you said you're in your like you're in your 30s new chapter. Like people have chapters in every decade, every phase of life, and it keeps going as long as you're open to it, which is really, really exciting. And it means you can have so many different identities or so many different jobs or careers or wear lots of hats throughout your life. You don't need to feel like maybe because you've been in a profession for, a chunk of time that that's who you are, like that's a choice to identify with that. It's also a choice to make a change if that's what feels like, if that doesn't feel too scary. So when people come to you who are like, I'm done, I hate my job, like how do you approach those types of clients who just feel like they're just like done and they just want to like run and they want you to help them run away?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it totally, I mean, each client, and you know, this is different. And so sometimes it's really unpacking and peeling back those layers of what's making you feel so burnt out and so ready for a change. And how desperate are you for that change? Or is it kind of a reframe, a mindset shift a little bit? As to, is it the right time? Do you know what you would even want to do? Like, there's a lot to figure out before you throw in the towel. And sometimes it's not even that you're ready to throw in the towel. It's, okay, you haven't taken a vacation in 2 years. You need a bit of a shift, or you've been doing the same job and you haven't had any new challenges. You're feeling like you're on this hamster wheel and you need to do something different. Is there a conversation you can have with your manager to find new ways, raise your hand in different opportunities that will kind of reignite a passion? And sometimes it is, as I said, taking inventory and realizing where are your priorities now that they weren't 5 years ago when you did start this role or something. Because a lot of times, I mentioned that our identities and our priorities will change over time. We've talked about that. And you might be a different person now than you were when you started that same job. And so recognizing that you can be thankful for what you've been doing, but now it might be time to look for something new. And I think, it's interesting right now because I don't know if you have, but I've worked with a number of people that have been in fear of getting laid off because they've seen it happening so much around them. And then there's this, I have fear that I'm going to get laid off, but I'm also not happy with what I'm doing and I'm anxious all the time and having to navigate with them. Would they be more comfortable, and do they need to for their mental health to be okay with not having a job, or do they need to stay in something to feel stable? And it's kind of uncharted territories, at least for me, because I do think you see it in the news, things changing so rapidly with large company layoffs, that I understand there's a lot of unknowns surrounded with it. So it can be, it's an interesting time.
Yeah. I mean, one thing I usually encourage people to reflect on if they've come to me and the career or their job is part of the container is, are they like running from a job, or are they running to a new opportunity? And if you're running from something, that's a slippery slope because you're likely to take all your patterns and baggage and everything that didn't work there that you're not clear on in yourself, that's out of alignment. You'll take it and it'll replay out at your next job. But I wondered as well if you've seen this in your coaching, because one of the things that, and I was, oh my God, I was definitely guilty as charged of this when I was in corporate, of like, I was either at times not clear on what my needs were when things had changed, like when I'd gone through a transition, particularly like when people become parents and your like entire world gets blown up and your priorities are very different. I don't think I was as clear on my needs and what I wanted and needed, and therefore wasn't advocating for my own self enough internally. And so it's very easy in those situations to get into, no one understands me. And this is, you go into victim mode. And I've wondered that, like, and I always say this I find with my clients where a lot of them are upset or triggered or activated about what's going on at work. I'm like, where were your needs not met? And can you communicate to your whoever it was where that gap was, because it's going to help both of you in the future. And I've found that like a lot of people without coaching stray away from having those conversations. And it might be because, as you said, there's so much uncertainty. I think corporate is more uncertain than it ever has been. I think that the safety net that a lot of people believe is there in corporate is an illusion. I think it has always been an illusion, but I think it's like way thinner now than it has ever been, because we're just seeing, I mean, I've seen top performers come to me because they've been fired, and I like floored that like 15 years ago, if you're in a top box of a performance matrix in a team, those people were protected, but now they're not. Like there's really like very few people I would say are immune to the chopping block in corporate, which is, as I said, the safety net isn't there anymore. Do you see that in clients as well, that people are fearful of actually like advocating for themselves and speaking, asking for what they need or asking for a change if it feels like it's no longer in alignment?
Absolutely. And I think to your point too, I've been there before myself. And dare I say, as a woman, I think we are more inclined to not want to advocate. And I do find that I've seen that a lot with clients. My male clients that are unhappy, they have no problem talking about it in a way of almost not victimizing themselves and just, this is actually what's happening and I need a change. And they seem a little bit more inclined to be vocal about it. And I
Good.
think I don't know if we've been conditioned to be this way, to not be the problem, to always be the problem solvers, that it's harder for women to go into a room and truly ask for what they want, or voice when something is not right. And I think that it is hard in corporate, especially right now when there is some uncertainty. So if you voice, that you need a change, or that you need more support, or you need to leave at 3 p.m. on certain days to go pick up your kids from school, then there's just this fear of, well, am I going to be the first one to be thought of when layoffs come in? Or is this going to negatively affect me in a promotion cycle because, I'm not working as hard as my male counterpart or my female counterparts that don't seem to have as many, balls in the air. And I think that what, to me, and what I have said to friends or people I've worked with that are going through this, is if you don't feel like you have someone who can advocate for you, it's always important to have, it doesn't have to be a female partner. If you're female, it could be a male, but building relationships at work are so critical, because you need to have someone that you feel like is in your corner. And if you're working at a company that you don't feel like you can be seen or heard by at least someone who is not even really a mentor, but an ally, then it might be worth thinking about why you even like working there other than the actual job at hand. And if that job at hand is in question because you feel burnt out or you don't feel heard or supported, then if that conversation doesn't feel like something you can have, then it might be really worth looking to go somewhere else, because we operate in this fear mongering cycle where I'm not going to be able to find something else, or I don't have time to look for a new job. But I really do think that if you can't feel supported, there's something else out there. There's new companies being made faster than we can even, look them up these days. So that's something that I've had to talk to people about, that are hard conversations, because sometimes you don't want to realize that the only kind of way out is leaving. You want to think that the company that you've maybe been with for years is going to support you and advocate for you. But unfortunately, and even from personal experience, that's just not the case sometimes.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And I think one is, I think for women, if you are going into a conversation where you're asking for needs because there's like things are not working out, or you need more time, or different working conditions or anything like that, always presenting what you need as a solution rather than a problem works well in your favor. Unfortunately, women are can be seen as like complaining with the same words coming out of a female's mouth to a male's mouth. It can be viewed very differently based on gender. And I'm not pointing the finger at anyone. It's all very unconscious. I work with people's unconscious and subconscious worlds all day. So bias is not something we do on purpose. So it's not pointing the finger at any males or females out there, because we all do it every single day in a billion different ways. But coming to with solutions over problems is a very sure way of like showing that you're trying to move things forward in a productive and collaborative way, and not just presenting all of your life problems and work problems on a platter and hoping that your boss might help you figure out the shit show that, you know, you're trying to navigate. But the other piece as well that I always think, and you were saying, it's 100% agreement with what you were saying, is like, if you're brave enough to have these conversations and say the things that are not working and try and design solutions, and like your boss can't meet you halfway, or this organization cannot support where you find yourself in life, you have to get really honest with yourself and be like, okay, this isn't working anymore. And maybe you're very loyal like I was, and it was heartbreaking leaving corporate in many ways. But like, circumstances change, internal and external. If they're no longer working, sometimes the hardest thing to do is the best thing to do, which is look for another job or move on, or like create your own business, like and become an entrepreneur so you can, you know, manage your own scheduling. You're not dependent on other people's and things like that. So, but I feel like when people are very loyal and very relationship driven, that can be really challenging, because you actually get more enmeshed with the people at work a lot of the time than the work itself. And so if you're staying for the people, but you hate the work you're doing, just sit and have a think about that, because it's like you can have both and you'll feel much more fulfilled in yourself when you've got the work that lights you up and also great people to work with. Do you see people struggling with those two, like getting stuck because they love the people so much, but they're no longer aligned or doing the work that they want to do?
Yes, so often. I think that is such a big thing that happens. It's most times the people that keep you. I think every time it's the people, not
100%.
the job.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, kind of to flip the coin a little bit, that's what I see is a massive issue these days in companies retaining strong talent, is forgetting that it's not just the job that is keeping them, it's most times the people. And so really investing in your people is so important. And I think we've kind of lost that a little bit. I don't know. I almost think COVID, there was a shift a bit, because there was so much emphasis on how do we keep people engaged in COVID virtually, working from home. And there was even a little bit more, and I think people were easy to get disconnected, but almost employees had the upper hand in a sense, because people were moving around so much, at least in the industry I was in. And so you had employers spending a lot more time and money being intentional about checking in, and, you know, mental health was finally being discussed. And then it's almost like now with this AI shift and just everything that we're seeing happen, I think employers feel like they have the upper hand, and that might be the case, but there is such a need for caring about your employees and human relationships at work, especially in these high performing industries where you're expected to be responsive all the time. You're expected to be on a lot. You're traveling a lot. You're sacrificing time with your family to be at work. And so I think that, you know, we're in this time where we kind of need to shift back a little bit and really realize like what it costs you to lose good talent is a lot more than just, you know, a line item on a spreadsheet. It's the culture shift that might happen when a lot of people leave, or even just one person who might be that glue leaves as well.
Are you seeing more of a focus in corporates on retention or less?
I'm seeing less. And I think that it's going to really negatively impact. I don't think that companies are necessarily thinking long term when they think about these mass layoffs or the fear. I think the fear that companies are putting into everyone's brains of, you know, now we're going to invest X amount of money into new AI. Well, that's great, all great, but you're now putting some fear if there's not transparency as to what that will do to other people and employees. And I do think, I mean, I don't know the future, but we have to get to a point where we look at all of this and say, the whole point is not, I mean, just success and numbers. It's, are you showing up to a place where people really enjoy coming to work? Because at the end of the day, life is about human experience, and we spend most of our time working, sadly. And so if you're taking away all of that positive human experience, at what point is it worth it? Just to be cutting corners by training AI robots. So I'd love to see, you know, if there's a time when we kind of all have this like honest conversation of like enough is enough. We need to focus on our people again, but I don't have a crystal ball. So
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, the flip side of people who are in roles or industries which are ripe for major disruption from AI. What's your advice for people who are looking down that sort of runway, and what do you suggest they can do instead of being like, oh my God, what do I do, and being fearful and scared? What are some like proactive steps that they could take to, you know, create some momentum in their career?
yeah, that's a great question. And I have seen that a lot. And, you know, my own advice to people is just get strategic. If you're in a role where you're adding value in something more than just, you know, inputting data, and you're in a strategic partnership role, that's really hard to replace with AI. And at the same time, instead of just saying, you know, I don't like AI, I know I don't know anything about it. It scares me. I hear that a lot too. It's just more of this avoidance and fear. Start learning, because AI is very new. You know, it's only been around for a couple years, and it is evolving and changing constantly. So if you can continuously start to learn about what's out there, you know, become familiar with the products and what your companies are using, then you'll be almost like a thought leader and a strategic partner as they implement new stuff. And I think we talked about this earlier, especially with burnout. I think this is kind of similar. Like, continue to raise your hand for something that's new. If there's a way where you can add value, even if it's not in your job description, I think that is a great way to show companies that you're here for the long haul and you're invested in them, and hope that they continue to stay invested in you. And I also work with some people that are, you know, 2 or 3 years out of college. So they're newer into their profession, and there's a lot of fear there, especially people in the, I guess, financial analyst type of space where your job really is to be the expert in Excel. And that was what you kind of were able to offer, or coding, especially there's a lot of people that graduated as experts in coding, and we're seeing that being replaced very quickly. And I just say, you know, if you are someone that has fear of that and that is all you really know, well, then go learn another skill. Go take an online course, or what are you passionate about? Because maybe it's that, you know, you're able to become a fitness instructor, or play music while you're also doing a 9 to 5, and have a few things where you have a few revenue buckets. That's not all. I mean, I not everyone loves to hear that because it's not as clear cut, but I do think, you know, we're just in a very unknown time, and I don't think you or I could say that we can predict what's going to happen. And so if that's why entrepreneurship or fractional roles are becoming so popular these days, is because you're able to kind of see revenue come in from different streams, when really the future, as we saw it 10 years ago, is way different than what it's going to be like in the next 10 years. So it's just changing.
Yeah, and I think that if you view AI as something to be feared or avoided, you're really not setting yourself up for success, because it's sort of like if we'd avoided the internet when it first came along and you never used it. And there's some like 90-year-olds who still don't have iPhones or internet, and that's fine. But like, I had to go into a bank to do an identification check when I was back in Australia. And it became very clear to me the gap in like people who didn't adopt technology, because I was standing in line because I had to physically have to show my passport with a group of people who were 70 to 95. And so they are now pretty much out of the banking world in many, like it's very difficult for them to do banking if they don't know how to do it online, because everything is online. There's very few things they even let you do in the physical bank now. This was in Australia when I was back there. But one thing I'll say about AI is, and this is not something to be fearful of, is that it is changing so rapidly and so quickly that the best time to start, if you haven't started, is today. Because if you want to give yourself a panic attack, tomorrow is 24 hours later and there's new versions of Claude, there's new versions of everything. So like, stop avoiding what is right here and start today. Like, sign up to a course. If your workplace is not paying for it, go and pay out of your own pocket. Like, this is one thing that's from switching from corporate mindset life 20 years for me to my like now. If you want to upskill in something and your workplace is not willing to pay for it, then pay for it out of your own bank account. We are like, corporate people are so reliant on like, oh, I'm not going to do it because my workplace won't pay for it. No, like if it's something you realize is important for your life and your career, like pay for it yourself, like you do a gym membership or other things. You know what I mean? Like there's this real hesitance sometimes to pay for like personal development or learning growth opportunities because it's a conditioning in corporate that it gets paid for. But if you're not going to get paid for it, then pay for it out of your own pocket and start today. Like today's the best day to start.
I agree. I mean, I think that's been one thing that's been interesting shifting from corporate into entrepreneurship is everything you have to do is on your own dime. And so, there was things I was so hesitant to do because I'm like, okay, well, maybe once I get there, I'll want to pay for this. And then I just started to realize like, you don't only get one shot, but you get one shot at life. And, I could try my hardest and fail, but if I don't try my hardest, then I'm going to fail every single time. And if I don't feel like I'm continuing to learn, then someone else is doing it better than me. And maybe that's my competitiveness inside of me, but I've honestly really enjoyed getting to actually decide what I want to learn. And when you pay for it on your own, you're actually I think there is psychological studies that you are more inclined to do it when it's your own money.
Yeah. You've got skin in the game. It's like doing a course for free versus paying even $20. Like you will commit more when there's a value exchange, there's a flow of value that's taking place. Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And it also is like a vote of like, if you pay for it yourself, it's almost like a vote of confidence in that I'm doing this for me and my future rather than like I'm relying on my work to pay for me. Because it's sort of a bit more independence, like you're starting to drive your own track of your like incorporated world that is you. Versus, I mean, that was the best piece of career advice I had when I was transitioning and I didn't really know if I wanted to stay in corporate or not. One of the executives said to me, you're the CEO of Fiona Inc. What do you want this organization to look and feel like going forward? And I was like, it was a terrifying thought because I'd never thought that I had the autonomy to design my career. I always was somewhat like, felt like I was connected to the bigger organization. It was very like, once I got over the initial like fear, it was very liberating because then I was like, oh, well, I could do what I want. Do you know what I mean? Rather than doing like trying to fit into the mold that is this job or this title or this organization culture and things like that. Very empowering.
It is super empowering. And at the same time, one of those things where you're like, I either can jump all in and go. But if you have one foot in, one foot out, you're just straddling it's almost, I think, more anxiety inducing when you don't just bet on yourself and take the leap. Yeah. And I mean, I think all of that is, you have to be super clear on your why and what you're doing. And don't just think that it's because, as you know, it's not the easiest path. But anything worth, you know, anything worth it is not going to be easy, I don't think. And if you are inclined ever to choose that path, I think it's not for everyone. And so I'm such a believer of, if you have this drive to do something big like that, then you should listen to your intuition and try, because it's a great adventure. And not everyone wants that adventure. So
Yeah.
go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. I've got one final question before we do some rapid fire, Morgan. So transformation often happens in small intentional steps. It's rarely these like huge leaps. And then that when we take these small micro movements, we can really unlock deeper levels of understanding in ourselves and then like sustainable change in our lives. Based on your journey, what's one small step or action that the Limitless community listening could take to unlock their limitless potential?
That's a great question. I mean, going back to what not everyone needs to go through some groundbreaking life change like I felt like I did to really take that next step. But I think the most important thing is that we can look up, and it could be 5 years, 10 years, and you're just kind of going through that path that's expected of you. And my biggest, kind of takeaway from what I've learned is keep inventory on yourself, like prioritize where you are, and almost have, you have a year review, usually at work with your company. Do that with yourself and kind of try to keep track of where are you and where do you want to be and how are different things changing, and prioritize that versus, sometimes you just look up and you don't even recognize who you are. You've been doing the same thing and you're burnt out. And instead of waiting to that point of burnout, try to continuously keep inventory. I think my biggest takeaway for me is blocking off that time every single day to journal and sit with myself. Your best relationship is with you. And you can't be there for other people. You can't be a great employee. You can't be a great partner if you aren't showing up for yourself. So I just encourage everyone, to whatever that looks like for you, voice noting, journaling, meditating, just make sure that you're prioritizing that part of your life because it's super important.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, self-connection is like the absolute critical piece. And if you are feeling burnt out or heading towards burnout, usually it's a really good prompt that you're not as connected to your body and your mind as you could be. So go inward or go to a therapist or a coach who can help you go inward, because it's the fastest way to move to redirect the burnout train. Okay, let's do some rapid fire. What's the biggest misconception people have about you?
Oh, that's hard. It's not very rapid. That I don't know.
What?
Oh my gosh, this is hard. My biggest misconception, that I'm a social butterfly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little bit more, everyone thinks I'm the most extroverted person they've ever met. And I think it takes more for me to actually get there than people think.
Okay, cool. I love it. What's one lesson that the world or the universe keeps throwing back at you to learn and relearn and relearn?
To trust the process
Mm-hmm.
and to stop trying to have control
Okay,
over
beautiful.
my life.
Yep. And how do you discern between fear and intuition?
I think that is something I've learned with getting to know myself better. Um, Fear lives in me like an anxious ball.
Mm-hmm.
And I think intuition is more of like an exciting, but also like almost tingling, skin crawling feeling that I can't turn away from it. And I think that's an interesting point. I know this is rapid, but fear and intuition can kind of feel very similar. And I think intuition is something that you need to listen to, and fear is something that you need to unpack.
Yeah. I mean, fear always comes with anxiety. It doesn't feel good in the body. Intuition, even though you might have the goosebumps that will give you sensation, it has a positive or a better feeling to it. So intuition is never going to make you feel like controlly or grippy or any anxiety or anything like that.
Yeah.
When you hear the word limitless, the name of this show, what are like 3 words or feelings that spring to mind for you?
I think possibility, adventure, and legacy.
Oh, beautiful. I love that. I don't think anyone's ever said legacy. And last one is, if you're having a bit of a low day and you need to lift your mood or vibration, what's a song that you like to put on to change your mood?
Okay. This is a throwback, but I have been really, and I'm not a typical Swiftie. I love Taylor Swift. I think she's amazing. But I have been listening to Enchanted. I think that was from her Fearless album. I was in high school.
Yeah.
And I was biking yesterday and had it, I don't know. It's an exciting song, and you just start to get the feels again. So I'm going to go with Enchanted because I've been having it on repeat.
Yeah, it sounds a bit nostalgic for you. I haven't listened to that song in ages, so I'm going to go turn it on later. So thank you. Well, Morgan, it's been so beautiful to connect with you today, and thank you for sharing your story so openly, and also all of your wisdom and knowledge of the world that you coach and work in. So thank you for coming on today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. It was super exciting to be here and get to chat with you. So
great. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in to Limitless. If you enjoyed today's episode and love hearing the stories of courageous cycle breakers, I'd be grateful if you could leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Your feedback not only helps others discover the show, but it also amplifies our mission to unlock emotional freedom and true potential. Every review makes a difference in helping more people embrace their limitless life.